Peter Tuchman, often referred to as Einstein of Wall Street, senior equity floor broker at Trade Moss. You've been here many years. I'm glad to chat with you.
Always a pleasure. Thanks for having me.
It's great to see you. So here, let's just start with Loop Capital putting a $1,200 price target on Nvidia. And as I'm looking at the early trade, the money flows for the Magnificent Seven today, the money flows were positive for two of the names, Nvidia and Tesla, this morning. So what are you thinking here? I mean, is there still room for some of these names like Nvidia and Tesla?
Look, it's so hard to know. I mean, it's irrational enthusiasm. Obviously, look, I recently spoke to Dan Ives, who told me that this whole AI thing is a revolution. It's a phenomenon. The amount of money that is being put into this by firms across the world is in the multi-trillions of dollars, and that it's here to stay and that it's on a fast track. And, you know, I find him to be one of the brightest guys out in the whole analyst space. And I'm not an analyst and I'm not an advisor. But look, you just have to watch these stocks. Look, are they long in the tooth? Yeah, it feels that way for sure. But they still keep going higher. What's the other stock that's up from 260 to 1,000? SMCI.
Yeah, we were just talking
also
about
a similar
that.
space.
Year to date up 222%.
Correct. So look, Dan had said that this is really a revolution, that we're looking at a fast track of probably 2025 for the Jetson world that we talked about recently, not 2050, right? So it seems irrational, but it's
right. And in a diversified portfolio, I mean, I'm curious to hear, do you have a multitude? Because as I said, the money flows were positive for Nvidia and Tesla today. The money flows were negative for Apple, Amazon, and Meta today. So, I mean, I guess that it tells the story of what a market is, right? Because sometimes they run hot, sometimes they don't. What's your advice to folks, particularly after we got two hot inflation prints, right? CPI and PPI. I know it's just 1 month, but...
You know what? Look, I kind of think it's fascinating. All eyes have been on the CPI and the PPI number. Obviously, the reaction to the CPI was, the great headline was, hot inflation number pours cold water on the market, right?
Yeah.
That was what came out on Tuesday or Wednesday. And obviously the market's reaction was, look, markets' expectations about a number, okay, and then if the number does not deliver, the market tends to be not very forgiving, and that's what we saw that day. However, what's important to note about the sell-off day that we had this week was we did not close on the low.
Right.
By the end of the day, in the last 3 minutes of trading, we rallied up 30 handles, 30 points.
Right.
And that's significant. Normally when we have a big sell-off like that, if we close on the low, we will often gap down the next day and we'll see some follow-through on the negative sentiment. And we didn't see that. We saw basically a rally into the close, and we've seen 2 days of up markets since then. Today's number, the PPI number, was once again disappointing. And yet, we saw a short sell-off early this morning, and we're already seeing a rally.
Right.
So it seems to me that even though some people are engaging that negative news, I think there's enough people who have been in the wings waiting for any kind of a market pullback that the minute we're seeing it, they're hopping on board and buying the market.
Yeah, I mean, and I agree with you, because I was sitting here, I saw the Dow down over 700 points, and by the end of the day it was down 500 points and something, and it was a 90% down day. Pretty much everything was selling off. The next day they bottomed back. They bottomed back. Note. And today sold off, but not nearly as bad. So the market really shrugged off some of these numbers. I just will say, folks, for Nvidia, may shine again when it reports on Wednesday. So we'll watch for that on Wednesday. That'll be big news for next week. And what's your takeaway for investors in the big picture? I mean, Bitcoin has been soaring. It's up 100-something% in 1 year. I mean, just this year is doing great. What do you tell them? Because we might be in a higher for longer sort of environment where we 4.30 on the 10-year right now. Is there certain areas that maybe seem a little more better positioned for 2024, or maybe don't in 2024?
Well, what was interesting, we've also seen the stock ARM, which IPO'd here in September, came out at 50.
Did great.
Sold off quite drastically in the beginning. Yes, it did. Yeah. But initially it did not. It got down to 35, and it was sort of the dog of the fall. And now it's actually accelerated what, 60, 70 points in the last couple of weeks. What I did see yesterday was that Nvidia has put in a bunch of, has taken a nice stake in ARM, as well as a number of other smaller companies that are in the Russell. So what would my advice be, and I'm not an advisor, is to find, and I discussed this with Dan as well, which is kind of fascinating, is that there are other stocks that are a lot cheaper in the AI space. Right now, to buy Nvidia at these record highs is probably a painful thing for people to do. Not that it may, look, if they're looking at a $1,200
So you're
target,
okay with mid caps and small caps and maybe having
I
a
think
variety?
that's what, look, I think a responsible way to address the AI space, if you don't want to take the chance of buying stocks that are trading on record highs, is to look at mid cap and small cap stocks that are in the same space, that may be in the Russell or whatnot, that may be attractive. And this one that I was looking at, that they mentioned that Nvidia had bought some sound design, I think, or sound mound or something. I saw it yesterday, but that makes more sense. You know, look, but obviously
Sound
the
Hound.
Sound Hound.
All right.
Sound Hound. The market has, obviously the Fabulous 7, Magnificent 7 are a bit long in the tooth, but there's definitely got to be companies that are a lot more affordable in the similar space that may be those diamonds in the rough.
Nice to see you, Peter
Always a
Tuchman.
pleasure.
Thank you so much of Trade Moss. Glad you were here today.